We begin now at the top of Daf Yud Tes Amud Beis in Meseches Shabbos. This is Shabbos Daf 19b. The Gemara just brought a Mishnah. The Mishnah said that there's a machlokus between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Let's say a person has garlic or certain kinds of grapes, unripe grapes which are already crushed. Are you allowed to put heavy beams on top of them before Shabbos in order to finish getting the juice out? So Rabbi Yishmael said it's permissible, and Rabbi Akiva now says lo yigmor, even before Shabbos. Rashi explains lo yigmor aser lahanicha miba'od yom tachas kovdan. It is aser to place before Shabbos underneath the heaviness of these beams kedei ligmor mishatechshach, that it should finish getting the juice out after Shabbos starts. That is not allowed, and the point of the Gemara is to say that we have found the Tana Rabbi Yishmael is the one who's lenient in such a case, since the fruit had already begun to be crushed, so it's not really an Isser Dorais if you'd continue on Shabbos itself, and therefore you're allowed to do it before Shabbos and allow it to happen on its own on Shabbos, and that's even allowed l'chatchila. Tana is Rabbi Yishmael and not Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara now brings another Amora. Rabbi Lazar says I can find a different Tana. Rabbi Lazar says, it's actually the Tana Rabbi Lazar. That's not we learned in the Mishnah. Chalos devash, if a person has honeycombs, sheriskan be'erev Shabbos, they were crushed up on Friday. V'yatzu me'atzman, and the honey comes out on its own. Aser, it's a problem. But Rabbi Lazar matir. And Rabbi Lazar says it is okay. So essentially, a very similar case to the Mishnah that we just had on Yud Tes Amud Aleph. We're just finding a slightly different case and a slightly different Tana. Rashi just explains over here, Rabbi Lazar Omer Hu Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas to Hu Amora. This is Rabbi Lazar the Amora saying that he can find the Tana Rabbi Lazar he Hu Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua Stam Rabbi Lazar shal Mishnah Ubraisa. That's the Tana Rabbi Elazar. And then explaining the case here, chalos devash, akveres rodev asuyin k'min chalos shel shayva v'advash pesochin. Again, you have these honeycombs. Sheriska and Kislan, they were crushed up before Shabbos. Asurin lo'oso Shabbos b'achila. According to the strict opinion, if you're going to crush it, continue to crush it on Shabbos, it's going to be asur to eat. But again, Rabbi Lazar says mutter, so we have it's either Rabbi Yishmael who's lenient in this case or Rabbi Lazar. So the question is, why did one Amora identify Rabbi Yishmael and why did one identify Rabbi Lazar, especially considering that it seems to be almost the exact same cases. One case with garlic and with unripe grapes and other things, and the other case here is with chalos devash. So the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, and Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, my time alo Amar Rabbi Lazar. Why didn't he say that the Tana is Rabbi Lazar? Amar lo chasamud meikara ochel ulevasof ochel. Over there by honey, when you're crushing it up, it starts out its food and it really ends up food. Honey's considered food, not a drink. We're looking for cases where it's permissible, even where it starts off as a food and it ends up as a drink. So what does Rabbi Lazar respond to this? It's indeed a good question against Rabbi Lazar, that by honey it seems to be an exceptional case because it's going from food to food. It's no proof in other cases. But Rabbi Lazar, Amar Lach, Rabbi Lazar will say back to you, Hashamina Leila Rabbi Lazar, Dafilu Zaysin Vanavim Nami Shari. We know from another source that Rabbi Lazar extends this lenient ruling to cases of olives and grapes where clearly we're talking about liquid. To Haki Asa Rav Hoshia min Nardai, because when Rav Hoshia came from Nardai, Asa Va'aisi Masnisa Biyade, he brought a brisa in his hands, which said, Zaysin Vanovim Shariskon Meir of Shabbos. If you have olives and grapes which were crushed up on Friday, V'yatzu Me'atzman, and the liquid came out on its own, Asurin, it's a problem. Rabbi Lazar of Rabbi Shimon Matirin, and there's Rabbi Lazar, along with Rabbi Shimon, is lenient, and they both are lenient, and they say it is mutter. So now the Gemara says, what Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina should have known this brisa. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina brisa lo shmiele. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina was not aware of this brisa. That's why he didn't bring this Rabbi Lazar. The Gemara asks the other direction. For Rabbi Lazar, my time alo amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. Why doesn't Rabbi Lazar bring Rabbi Yishmael, the same Mishnah that we brought in Yud Tes Amud Aleph that Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina brought? That's a very good proof that if it's already crushed up before Shabbos, you can continue to allow it to squeeze the juice out on Shabbos. Amar Loch, he says back to you, Lav Itmar Allah, because there was a statement made about that Mishnah, Amar Rava bar Chanina, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Rava bar Chanina said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, qualifying that Mishnah, that b'mechusarin dicha dekuliyam lo pligi, if the items that you're talking about, these unripe grapes or whatever the case might be, if they're not crushed up properly, everybody agrees in that case. Ki pligi b'mechusarin shchika. They were only arguing when it was mechusar shchika. Rashi will explain all these things. V'hani navin ki mechusarin dicha damu. And our case over here, the original case that we had was actually a case where it was only mechusar dicha, so it is no proof. Rashi explains, "B'mechusarin dicha kol yalma lo pligi de asiri." even in that Mishnah, even Rabbi Yishmael agreed that if it was lacking dicha, it's for sure aser titinasan he gomeres, because then when you're letting the beams on top of them, it's considered that you're finishing the squeezing process. V'nimtza hakol aser b'Shabbos, you're doing the real malach on Shabbos. What were they arguing about was shechika yoser midicha. They were arguing about a case where it was already crushed up, but it wasn't like totally pulverized. Shechika is even more crushed. So in such a case where you're just doing the last finishing touches, that's where Rabbi Yishmael was lenient, according to this qualification of Rabbi Yochanan. But in a case where you really just started to crush it before Shabbos, and then you're going to continue crushing it on Shabbos, there everyone would agree that you'd be strict, and that's why it's not a good source to bring this Rabbi Yishmael that we're lenient again, because he's only lenient when it's the last crushing of the grapes that's being done. So therefore, again, that's the reason why Rabbi Elazar did not bring the same Tana Rabbi Yishmael that Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina brought. Gemara now says, Hora Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina k Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina actually taught that the halacha is like Rabbi Yishmael, that we're lenient in these cases. Gemara now continues to another discussion. Shemen shel badadin umachzolos shel badadin. So this is talking about again in the olive press. So Rashi says that shemen of badadin is there was like some leftover olives in the corner of the olive press, and then the machzolos shel badadin. This is the people who make the olive oil. They use these certain mats. So Rav Asar u'Shmuel Shari. Rav said they're forbidden to use these on Shabbos, and Shmuel said it's permitted. Rashi explains, let's just see first Shemen Shel Badadin, Aidi Da'ayr Bebeis Habad, since we're talking about the olive press, Nakat Le Shemen HaMishtayer Bezovis Habad Tachas Atin. We're talking about a little leftover oil that's left underneath the beams. V'hunitan LeBadadin, that's given over to the people who make the oil. V'chein Machzola Shel Badadin Shemechasen Benes Hazesim. There were certain mats they used to cover the oil. Rav Aser Letel Tule Mishum Muktzah. Rav says these items are Muktzah. The Rav Savar Rabbi Yehuda b'Muktzah. Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda by Muktzah. U'Shmuel Savar Rabbi Shimon the less like Muktzah. Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon in general does not hold of the concept of Muktzah. This is discussed a lot later in the Masechta, the famous machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon in terms of how strict we are when it comes to Muktzah. So here we're listing a few cases where Rav and Shmuel take sides in this issue. Rav generally holds like Rav Yehuda, he holds of Muktzah. Shmuel generally holds like Rabbi Shimon, he does not hold of Muktzah. Similar discussion right now. Hani karche dezuze. Rashi says these are pairs of mats which were used to cover merchandise and ships. Rav Asar or Shmuel Shari. Rav said it's a problem, Shmuel said it's permitted. Same issue, whether it's an issue of Muktzah or not. Amar of Nachman said, Eiz lechelba v'rachel legizasa v'tarnagos lebeitzasa v'ture deradia Deridia, Vitamri, Iska. So these are animals that are designated for certain things. In terms of the case of the animals, you want to try to shecht it on Yontif. So you have a goat that was designated for its milk, a sheep for its shearings, you have a chicken that was designated for the eggs, you have a ox that was designated to plow with, and in the last case, not talking about an animal, it's talking about dates that were meant for schora, meant to buy and sell them. So are these things okay, or are they muksa on Yontif? Rav Asar Shmuel Amar Mutter. Rav says it's a problem, Shmuel says Mutter. Again, the same machlokas. Rav follows Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel follows Rabbi Shimon. The kamib fligi bepluksa the Rabbi Yehuda of Rabbi Shimon. They're arguing about the machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, like I just said a moment ago. There was a Talmud who, in the city of Charta, he actually taught like Rabbi Shimon, and Rashi points out that Rav Hamnuna was a resident of the city. Shamte Rav Hamnuna put him into Chayrim, said you cannot teach that the halacha by muksa, you can't be lenient like Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Rabbi Shimon Svirulan. We hold like Rabbi Shimon. Why would he put him in Chayrim for saying something that we actually hold like now? So the Gemara answers, Ba'asrei de Rav Have. This was actually the location where Rav lived. Loi boile lemeber hachi. So he shouldn't have done this. He shouldn't have paskined against Rav in Rav's locale. Hani trei talmidei. There were once two talmidim. Chad matzil b'chad mana, v'chad matzil b'arba v'chomesh money. This is a question that's discussed also later in the Masechta. Let's say there is a fire and a person needs to save items. Rashi here says, Ochlin umashkin mibnei hadaleika harbe lechatzer hamureves. You're trying to save a lot of food and drink during a fire into a chatzer that has an eruv. So there's a question over there, how many kalim do you use? One of them use chad mana, keretanan matzil and sal moli kikaros, ve'avagav sheyesh bo me'asuris. You have one keli, you put in a lot of food into there, even if it's 100 meals worth. V'chad matzil ba'arba v'chomesh money, one used four or five vessels, elisha mekaflan kulam l'soch ligar, then he put them into a larger kli, v'nosen b'pam achas, and carried them in one shot. So they did it in different ways, and the Gemara points out, this is the same exact machlokas. We're going to have this later on between Rabba Bar Zavda and Rav Huna. The Gemara now continues with the Mishnah. Ein sol. Now this first part of the Mishnah we actually quoted earlier. Ein sol in basar batzil ubeitza el kadesh yitzol mibod yom. Do not roast meat or onion or egg before Shabbos unless it fully roasts before Shabbos starts. All of this was related to the fact that you might end up stoking the fire by turning over the coals. Ein nosnin pasla tanorim chashecha. Similarly, don't put bread into an oven before dark. V'lo charara al gabe gecholim. Same thing with a wafer on top of coals. Ela kedei sheyikramu panemi ba'od yom. Unless it kind of crusts, the face of it should crust over before Shabbos starts. Rabbi Eliezer Omer kedei sheyikram hatachton shelo. The bottom part of it should crust over. Again, the idea is that it should cook a little before Shabbos. If it doesn't, you have the problem that you may increase the heat. The Mishnah is lenient and says you can put the carbon Pesach into the oven before Shabbos. Rashi says, it's going to roast on Shabbos. Here it's okay, even though normally it's not okay. The B'nai Chabura's reasoning, because the carbon Pesach was eaten with a whole group of people, and they are very aware of the halachas. They're going to remind each other, and they're not going to come to increase the level of heat. And then finally the Mishnah says, ending the oven, you can light the fire. This is talking about in the Beis HaMikdash, using the flames in the Beis HaMikdash. Rashi explains, what they're trying to say here is you can put even a little bit of flame there, with the wood that was used in the bonfire at the Beis HaMoked, which was an area of bonfires in the Beis HaMikdash in the Azara, and it can increase and get warmer as Shabbos comes. In the Beis HaMikdash, we're not concerned that the Kohanim are going to increase the heat. Rashi says Beis HaMoked is the Lishka Gedola, the big area. Lishka Gedola Hisha Kohanim Ischamin Sham. It was a large area where the Kohanim would warm themselves up. In Meduras Eish Hanisekes Tamid, there was bonfires always going over there. Sheish Bazar. They used to walk around barefoot on marble in the Azar, so it was very cold, so they needed to warm up. And that concludes Daf Yud Tes Amud Beis. We'll continue with this Mishnah on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph in the next video.